I'd love to sell out and get a bunch of money.
We said it. Your movies do sometimes make a lot of money. That's
It doesn't
possible.
mean I get it.
Pay this man. He deserves it all.
No, I'm serious. The phrase is, it has been for years, you get famous in movies but rich on TV.
Right.
And that's pretty much how it is. But I do remember meeting
Kristen?
Kristen Stewart. Yeah, we met at Blinky's Donuts at Topanga Canyon Boulevard and Dumet's in Woodland Hills.
Is that your go-to?
She was on her way to Brazil for a Twilight junket or something.
Right.
She has to meet you at 8:30 in the morning. I go, can she meet at Blinky's?
Does she
we
like
got there,
donuts?
she's like, I need coffee, man.
Prepare your ears, humans. Happy, Sad, Confused begins now.
I'm Josh Horowitz, and today on Happy, Sad, Confused, we have a two-time Academy Award winner. For the last 25 plus years, he's made some of my favorite films: Election, About Schmidt, Sideways, The Descendants, and now his latest, The Holdovers. I love this movie. I love this filmmaker. I am pleased to welcome Alexander Payne to Happy, Sad, Confused for the very first time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, thank you.
It's good to see you
We
again.
had a conversation a couple of weeks ago and it went well, so now we're doing this.
I passed the first test.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know what happens after
it's
this.
mutual. It's mutual.
No, I'm thrilled to talk to you about this film and this remarkable career. I mean, since we spoke, the good news is people are enjoying your movie, actual real people, unlike me, like the fake critics. The movie's doing very well in limited release. You're platforming, it's expanding.
Right. Well, it just opened a few days ago. We are speaking here on Wednesday, November 1st. It just
Right.
opened in 2 cities 5 days ago on Friday. So I hope it's doing well. I hope it,
Well, the deep dark secret about Alexander Payne's career is you are a not so secret moneymaker. Your movies actually do very well. So
Not all of them.
Well,
Not all of them. The big ones were Sideways and The Descendants.
But those did. I mean, I was actually shocked. I mean, I knew they did well, but like The Descendants makes nearly $200 million. Sideways over $100 million.
The Descendants is the one I can sort of brag about, which is apparently, I haven't corroborated this, but apparently that year at Fox and 20th Century Fox, it was the biggest moneymaker compared to what it cost, because it just cost 20 something, and then made like 200 million. So compared to cost, it was the biggest success that year.
So
not the biggest movie, but the biggest, you get it.
in relation to the budget, sure.
Right.
So in terms of like the creative freedom you've had over your entire career, do you think that's related as much to the accolades, to the fact that you do get the awards and the great critical praise, but you also generally or sometimes do quite well by studios?
The key is keeping the budgets low.
Yeah.
That's the key. That's where freedom lies. So I've never needed or even necessarily wanted a hit. What I need, and generally what filmmakers need, is you got to make your negative cost some degree of what we used to call P&A and $1.
Right.
Then you can keep making movies. I mean, filmmakers basically just think about what can I do to keep making movies.
Stay out of director jail, which is a real thing for directors. It can be.
If your movie tanks.
Yeah.
And I had a tanker in the unmentionable. No,
We can mention it. It's a good movie. It just
Downsizing.
didn't work.
No, downsizing, man. That tanked bad. But I wasn't thrown into the movie Hoosgow too much, because I think hopefully I think I'd accumulated enough
Goodwill.
equity before then that it could be. That write-off could be a one-off.
So at this stage, when a movie is starting to be released, are you at peace with however this turns out? You like the movie, obviously.
No, that's not obvious.
Okay.
But finish your question. That's another thing. Finish your
Okay.
question.
I guess the first part of it is your general demeanor in this stage of releasing a movie. You've had this movie basically done for over a year, so you've had to kind of like live with it.
I've had some validation that it's watchable.
That's
It's largely
modest.
in focus. No,
Okay, yeah.
largely in focus and watchable, and the fact that it's got
largely in focus. Okay.
there's one out of focus shot. Sorry, Glenn. No, the fact that Focus picked it up a year ago at the Toronto Film Festival unfinished,
Right.
and paid what I'm told was a decent amount for it, showed, exhibited belief in the film. And then its reception at some festivals has been generous. And so one is relieved that the film is generally playing well. First and foremost, it's a relief.
Right. Now, the back half of my assortment of words there was something about your own contentment with the film, and you seem to stop me because that is not necessarily
Well,
always the case, that you feel.
I'm not trying to eat humble pie here or something like that, but I make the films. I like parts of them. You know, I'm still learning. I maybe can like them more or dislike them more in hindsight than in the moment, because in the moment, you know, you're just splashing around in it and
Right.
feeling it's good or decent enough, beat by beat by beat, mostly through editing. But then you really need an audience to tell you what you've got on your hands, you know, and that's why Kevin Tent, the editor, and I start screening. Well, many filmmakers do really, really early on. As soon as we have a cut, we have to show it, some version of it, not just to financiers, you know, so they feel okay about it, but more importantly to my friends and anybody we can get to come see the movie. And that tells you if your movie's basically working or not, especially if it's a comedy.
Yeah, I mean, you audience is king, right? I mean, you can trust your own instincts to an extent, but then once you start to give it over to an audience, they're going to tell you what absolutely is correct or not, and especially when you.
Well, you're making it for an audience.
Yeah.
It depends on how large an audience you're making it for. You know, I mean, in a way, basically my audience is me and my best friends, right?
Right.
If I can appeal to them, and then your luck as a filmmaker is if what occurs to you and your best friends as basically a good movie
Overlaps with the actual audience.
happens to occur to enough other people that you can recover your negative cost, some degree of P&A, and $1.
$1,
You know?
that key dollar. Let's give a little bit of overview for the audience that is unfamiliar with The Holdovers. The elevator pitch, and it occurs to me most of your films don't necessarily lend themselves to elevator pitches, to that kind of like what is Sideways? Like, what do you even say to somebody that's going to.
Two guys go on a wine tour the week before one of them is to get married.
That works. I just don't know if that's.
It doesn't say much,
Exactly.
nor should it. You got to see the damn movie.
Right. I guess that's the benefit of being Alexander Payne now with the body of work. Like, trust me, I'll put
And
this
the body.
And the body. They're buying the body. They're buying the film and the body. Okay, so this is set 1970. Basically, a trio of characters are at the core here, led by the great Paul Giamatti, a curmudgeonly professor, is that fair to say, in that kind of lost holiday week at the end of the year, and a cook, a student, a professor, all essentially finding each other in a way, finding companionship in this time that's rough on a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me a little bit about. Okay, so this I know this is inspired by a French film, I believe, that you saw.
Inspired loosely. What
Okay.
it means is I stole the premise.
Okay, is money change hands or no?
No. The base, I saw a 1935 French film by the great Marcel Pagnol. It's called Merluce, and it has the same basic setup. Curmudgeonly teacher with a wonky eye is charged with taking care of a bunch of students at an all-boys boarding school
Right.
who have nowhere to go over the holidays, and winds up having some kind of a relationship with one of them.
You have no.
That's the setup.
You didn't go to a boarding school, as I understand it, right?
No, I went to an all-boys school, private school, high school, but not a boarding school. No.
So is that? I mean, you know, the old adage is write what you know, and often filmmakers, especially earlier in their career, they're mining their own life and experiences. At this stage, is there a little bit more, I don't know, confidence that you can graft your own life experiences onto the specificity
Of any story, there's a big difference between an autobiographical film and a personal film.
Right.
They
can still be personal
They
if it's
can be
not-
the
yeah.
same.
Yeah.
But the process of making a film, if you're making it, you know, sincerely, makes it personal. So David Hemmingson and I, the screenwriter of this one, started with that basic premise I just told you. But then the process of what story skeleton you decide upon, and then what character and thematic flesh you put on the skeleton, the choices you make there, what occurs to you, that's what makes it personal.
So do you see as much of yourself in this as the Omaha set?
Oh, hell,
films?
all the movies are personal.
Yeah.
And that's also the job of the professional
Right.
filmmaker, is to make it personal. I've used this example before, but I'll say it again. For example, The Best Years of Our Lives, William Wyler. Did we talk about this last time?
No.
Okay, so he did not write the screenplay. But, for example, the wonderful passage early in the film where Frederick March comes home to Myrna Loy, and she's in the kitchen, her back to the front door, across a hallway, and the children open the door, and there's Dad, and they're overjoyed, but he says, "Shh, I want to surprise your mother." And she, on her back, hears, "Who's that at the..." And her shoulders tell you she realizes who it is, and she turns and they look at each other after the years of war down that hall. It makes you weep.
Yeah.
Wyler staged it that way because that's how he came home to his wife. So it's just a small example about how you make things personal by, and that's the job of the professional director, I feel, is to make anything you do personal somehow.
You mentioned, ultimately films are for an audience, and thus far all of your films have been on the...
And I got to say, a group audience too, not individual viewers at home, ideally.
Well, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about.
Thank
So
you.
this is a film that plays great in theaters with a big group, as all of your films, I would say, do. Especially, like, comedy is always very important to your films, and who wants to laugh in isolation? It just doesn't work as well. For instance, like when this was sold to Focus, is a big part of that. There's no way this is going to end up on, if you go to Searchlight, oh wait, are we suddenly on Hulu? Like, is that like a big thing for you at this point in your career to make sure?
Yes. And hats off to Focus for committing themselves and this film to theatrical.
Yeah.
And it helped that, they bought it a year ago. It would have been September of last year. And for a number of reasons, they made the decision to wait, to sit on it for a year and put it out this year, not last. But chief among them is that people would be more used to going back to theaters now, and hopefully next year even more so.
Yeah.
And not just for the big movies, even though the big movies prime the pump of getting people to go to the, Oppenheimer and
Sure. But
Barbie
there's also a trickle-down effect of that, too.
and
That's-
now Taylor Swift. And
Right.
No, that you go go for the big movies, but maybe we'll do what I do: stay at the Cineplex and sneak into the other one. And
How do you
see
think I
the
spent
other
my
movies.
teenage years? Triple features.
Yeah, I used to do. I should. Yeah, I used to call it movie smorgasbord. Pay for one movie and then just go see 6 movies.
Oh yeah. Every year after I would go away for summer camp for 8 weeks. I would come back. My older brother would take me to the movies, and we'd just like see as many movies as possible, catch up on everything we missed that
Yeah.
summer. Happiest memories. When you think back, you must have had so many remarkably wonderful experiences with audiences for your film festivals, premieres, actual audiences. Do any stand out to you as that really made a mark on you?
No. Which is not to say they didn't happen, but with these lights on me and in front of a
Sure,
camera,
sure.
I'm blanking.
No problem.
Also, I'm splashing around so much in this one because I am watching it with a lot of audiences, and I get asked like, "Oh, will you be sitting through the film tonight?" And most of the time, particularly in the early festival, it's absolute. Are you kidding? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I got to
This
see
is
how
what I
the
did it
movie's
for.
playing, and if I'm going to do a Q&A afterwards, you got to get a sense of the temperature of the room. But also, a movie is not, as we've been suggesting, a movie is not complete without an audience. Not viewers, but an audience, especially a comedy. And then we who work in film don't have that rush that stage actors get or musicians get, that what you do is immediately seen and felt by an audience,
Right.
and you have that communication. The closest we can get to it is with early festival audiences.
Right.
Not later audiences because then they're like, "Oh, well, I don't think it's that good." I'm one of those too. But and that has to bleed into the fact that the writer strike and actor strike have been going on, and the writer strike is over. So now David Hemmingson, the writer, can be present in some of these screenings and see his words being appreciated by the audience. But I got a text from Paul Giamatti last week saying, just before the opening, he said, "I feel like Achilles brooding in my tent."
Just waiting. Let me in, coach. Put me in.
And this poor kid, Dominic Sessa, who's never been in a movie before, and he co-stars with Giamatti, hasn't seen it with an audience. I say, well, wear a mustache and sneak in, and everybody's scared him. Like, no, if somebody recognizes you and takes a picture of you and posts it, everybody's in trouble.
I heard that story though. Was it his girlfriend that showed up at a
Yeah,
screening?
yeah. She came. She came to. She was like the last A at a Q&A.
I love it.
His girlfriend. I mean, he's seen the movie, but alone.
Yeah. When you think back to your childhood, were the films that made the impact on you the most films you saw at home or films in a theater?
Theater.
Yeah.
Although I have vivid memories of this is in back 60s and early 70s, they had teeny tiny TVs that you put in the kitchen or something like that.
Sure.
And so I would take those TVs and take them up secretly and bring them upstairs and watch old movies that started at 10:30 under the covers.
So
That's where I saw all the old Warner Brothers gangster pictures.
were you the anomaly in your family? You grew up in Omaha. Parents ran a restaurant, as I understand
Not
it.
parents, my dad.
Your dad did. Okay, sorry. So were they film lovers? Did they have the passion that you have?
Not passion, but my mother and her mother and her siblings had been very avid film goers.
I was watching back your, like it's nice to say the sentence, your two Oscar acceptance speeches. Your second, for The Descendants, is very sweet. You brought your mom, dedicated it to your mom. That must have been a very meaningful thing. I mean, these things can be silly and gratifying, but to like share it with...
Well, she had also threatened me and said, if you ever win it again, you have to dedicate it to me like some of those other people do.
Right, there's that part. That's a little darker. I was trying to stay on the sweet side.
And now she has dementia, doesn't remember any of it. She's 100 years old.
But she did experience your success and see it, and that must have been a great...
Yeah, what meant a lot to her at the time was because I said something to her in Greek. We happen to be Greek American at the Oscars, and for about a month after that, she was the most famous Greek mother in the world. She was getting calls from Athens to be interviewed and everything, and she enjoyed that month. Too bad she can't remember it.
We talk about your films playing for audiences in a theater. When I think back, I'm curious, like Citizen Ruth and Election, when I think back to my experiences seeing those films, I remember those doing actually very well on home video. Is that true? Did they find like a second
I don't think
life?
Citizen Ruth ever did. Probably, I bet Election did, because the distributors pretty much dumped both those films at the box office. But Election accrued some critical momentum, and then by the end of the year was appraised or reappraised. It had come out in April of that year, April of '99. But Jim and I were nominated for an Oscar that year, which kind of surprised us. We thought maybe Reese Witherspoon might, but she wasn't.
Well, it surprised people because, and I think you've even said this, like at first when that material came to you, it seemed to be just a high school film, which
that's what they had in mind. Yeah,
that's what Paramount was looking for.
Well, it was
basically?
MTV.
That's right.
Not
MTV
even so
films,
much,
right?
but they were all under Viacom at the time. And so MTV was launching a movie-making entity,
right?
And this was one of theirs. And they, Albert and Ron, the producers, and brought it to MTV. Well, they'll want to do a teen movie, and there was a whole spate of high school movies at the time in the late '90s, which I couldn't have been less interested in. And I didn't even read that novel for a long time after it had been given to me, until finally I did, kind of begrudgingly. And saw, oh damn! All right, this is good. I think Jim and I can do something with this. But I interrupted the question you were.
I'm all over the place.
You were talking about home video and Citizen Ruth and Election.
No, it just I was curious because I wasn't sure what the fact was, if home video actually was beneficial to you or not.
But I think people probably caught up to Election on home video.
Right.
I don't know if anyone ever really caught up to Citizen Ruth.
Citizen Ruth did have like the festival run, right? It's Sundance, and that's kind of where it found a little bit of a life and reputation.
To some degree, it still tanked later. I think Miramax pretty much dumped it. They didn't spend a dime on it on the release.
Was that?
But it helped my career enough to score a second film to get Election, and that one really put me and Jim Taylor and me on the big board.
Yeah, because when I was reading back, I mean, that first kind of act of your career is fascinating because you come out of film school and you make this thesis film that... The Passion of
Martin,
which I watched a little of this morning. I think there is a lot of the text of Alexander Payne in that film.
It's on the a Criterion Blu-ray of Election.
Oh, I love it.
In its entirety, and they were generous enough, Criterion was, to let me do some restoration to it. So it's in pretty good shape.
And if you just, I only had a chance to watch the first 15 minutes or so. That's an Alexander Payne film. It's there. You see it there. And clearly others did too, because from what I gather, you got a deal out of that. You like a really promising, remarkable deal, which I don't think would happen now. I don't even know if those
Maybe
deals
it would.
exist.
What when film schools have their end of the year screenings in May or June, don't scouts still go looking for talent? Scouts from agencies and
I suppose they did, but even like it sounded like a relatively lucrative for that time contract with Universal. No, I mean,
yeah. Within a month of that film's showing at the end of the year, the Spotlight Awards at UCLA, I had an agent and a writing directing deal at Universal. So what did that mean? I got $125,000 and an office on the lot. 75 of that was the Writers Guild minimum for something being contract, and then 50 was, I don't know, we love you money.
You must have felt like you had it made though. Like,
nothing,
this is easy. I
I thought I'd be directing my first feature within a year, and it was 5 years.
Right. And that feature eventually.
But that $125,000 helped see me through those then lean years. You keep about half of it.
Right.
So I had about $60,000, $65,000 on to live on, or at least supplement whatever else I was doing for like the next 5 years.
So that script eventually becomes about Schmidt.
Correct.
But before that, so Citizen Ruth, for those that haven't seen it, it's still a fantastic film. Laura Dern, who you've since worked with her dad, etc. That's when you start to obviously work with very accomplished, famous actors. I mean, you're directing Laura, but you're also directing Tippi Hedren and Burt Reynolds.
Yep.
Is that intimidating? Did you feel like you knew how to work with actors of that stripe then?
It was slightly intimidating, and I felt I knew how to work with actors even then. That I have to say. I always felt that's the one, you go to film school and some people are really good with camera and some people are really good with lenses and some people are good with lighting or mood or whatever. And I always sort of felt I was pretty good with actors.
Is that
because
intangible?
Maybe, no,
like,
I think because I was
people?
a frustrated not a frustrated, but I just feel I have some acting talent without being very good at it. But I get that, and I'm kind of a ham and clown, and yeah. And also, even going back to my not even Passion of Martin, but Carmen, my 18-minute Super 8 version of the opera Carmen that I made in Project One at UCLA, still a comedy, a send-up, and I cast that one well and worked with the actors well. And so anyway, I don't mean to be patting myself on the back too much, but the other thing, too, is it's not just me and my attitude, but the actors who chose to be on Citizen Ruth were doing so because they liked the script and had seen Passion of Martin and believed in me. So they made it easy for me. It's a two-way street.
That's huge, yeah. You don't want to feel like you're having to prove yourself in the middle of making your own movie. You have enough of a job to...
No, they were in it and taking scale. I mean, there was a feature film with 44 days of shooting, something like that, long post schedule for $2.1 million. And a lot of that was because all the actors from Laura Dern on down were just taking scale.
So
you had Burt Reynolds and Tippi Hedren and Swoosie Kurtz and Mary Kay Place and Kurtwood Smith all coming to Omaha, Nebraska in some jerk's first film, but they liked the script.
That's amazing. It's somewhat surprising to me because there are the stories of like Burt Reynolds giving like Paul Thomas Anderson shit, and it's like,
what kind of shit can we say shit on your podcast?
Apparently,
okay.
I just did. Yeah. I think he just questioned. Maybe he. I don't know. These might be apocryphal stories, but
no, I can tell you true ones. But go ahead.
Oh, about that production, or about yours with the Burt?
Yeah, I don't know about.
They
Paul.
just. Suffice it to say, from what I gather, they did not get along, and he did not trust Paul's direction. I don't know if he didn't.
He still did it in spite of himself because he's terrific.
Oh, he's
Boogie
amazing
Nights.
in it. Yeah.
With me, he trusted my direction and was nice, but couldn't remember his dialogue.
Oh wow.
And I had to go to cue cards, but he was in a position where I had to bring up cue cards, not he. At least tell a young kid, hey man, I want to do good for your movie. Would you but I need a little help because It just helps. Like, great, and we're on a tight schedule, so that'll help me. Whatever you say to a director.
Yeah.
But it was like pulling teeth.
That's an awkward situation. It's. I mean, we can get to this in terms of the holdovers, and it's often been cited your films have that kind of 70s film sensibility, and indeed, you've called upon 70s film stars, whether it's Burt Reynolds or Jack Nicholson,
Stacy Keach, Bruce Dern, Beau Bridges.
So that must be something that
It's a thrill.
Yeah,
it's a thrill to work with those guys, and there's a way in which. Maybe because I had two older brothers, one born in 1950, the other 1953. And those guys, anyway, there's a way in which I kind of see them as older brothers.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, as stars that I idolized, but also from a period that was really groovy, and they appreciated the movies they were making with me, and there was just very good camaraderie. The one I really want to work with is Jeff Bridges.
Not a false note is possible out of that actor.
And I've worked with Beau, his brother Beau Bridges,
Yeah.
and I met Jeff Bridges on a number of occasions. And it always just feels, and I'm sure he gives that vibe to many directors he meets, but like, hey,
man.
I'm your older brother.
Exactly. Happy, Sad, Confused is sponsored by BetterHelp. Well, it's a tricky time of year, guys, because yes, the holidays are fast approaching, and that's a time of year when you're expected to be just thrilled and happy, but there are pressures associated with it. I feel it. I don't know about you. The pressures of getting your work in, enjoying yourself, enjoying your family, and all the complications that come with that. This time of year, the truth is it can be a lot, and it's natural to feel some sadness or even anxiety about it. I feel that way. It's okay to feel that way, and that's why BetterHelp is such an important sponsor for Happy, Sad, Confused. Therapy can be a bright spot amid all of the stress of the season and all of the change associated with this season. It's something to look forward to make you feel grounded, and to give you the tools to manage everything going on. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, it's convenient, it's flexible, it's suited to your busy schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire, and you get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. They make it so easy on you guys. Find your bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/HSC today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/HSC. I do want to talk a lot about casting, because you cast the hell out of your movies, and obviously actors love working with you. So like About Schmidt, for instance. I mean, Nicholson is amazing in that film, as he always is, but he's particularly fantastic.
Don't forget Udo Kier. I had Udo Kier in Downsizing.
Fantastic. Okay, so how do you get Jack? How hard is it to get the great Jack Nicholson on board your project?
The way it happened for About Schmidt was easy, seemingly, which was that, so I had written the aforementioned script for Universal,
Right.
which you did your research and knew it came, like a dozen years later, it became About Schmidt. So the reason it happened is that many years later, a guy named Harry Gittes, Jack Nicholson's very good old friend, and indeed the character Jake Gittes is named for Harry Gittes, sent me a book called About Schmidt by a writer named Louis Begley here in New York City, which was about a fellow who retires and questions his choices and all that. And I had kind of forgotten about my previous script. It was painful to think about, and let's just move on. Right. And, it was the one I had in the proverbial bottom desk drawer. But I read it, and I thought, I'm still interested in that theme. I still haven't really scratched that itch. And it was designed to be a vehicle for Jack Nicholson. In other words, Harry had sent Jack Nicholson the book. Jack Nicholson had read it and told Harry, okay, if you get a good script, let me know. And so Harry found me, and I wrote it with Jim, and then the more we were adapting the book, actually, the more we wound up rewriting my previous script called The Coward, using some narrative threads taken from the novel, which allowed us to put some things in Act 1 that paid off in Act 3. We turned it into Harry. like on a Monday or Tuesday. Friday, he gave it to Jack Nicholson. And by Tuesday, I was at Jack Nicholson's house, who had accepted to do it.
That's a good Tuesday. I
So
would
it's
think,
a lot
yeah.
of getting there.
Yeah.
You know, Louis Beckley has to write the book, and Harry Gittes has to buy the rights or get the rights bought for him by Sony. Have Jack Nicholson, have, you know, the timing with election, that people had seen election, liked election. Who's this guy? So a lot of things, that's why I say seemingly. A lot bubbles around underneath. But that's how it happened.
And once he's in, though, I would imagine
He was in.
he's in. Because the lore on Jack is, this is a man who, you know, he's still with us. Sadly, he's not acting anymore, but loved to act. Like, he lived to act. The famous story, I think, in like A Few Good Men, on those like courtroom scenes, is like he did all like the opposite coverage. Like, he didn't need to like be there for.
Well, all the old pros do that, to do the off camera.
Right. But I guess like the
Only jerks don't stick around for off camera.
they're in the trailer. Yeah, you can. That's a good barometer. So he on set. What did anything surprise you in terms of like how he? I mean, you know, he's got the goods. You know, he's Jack freaking Nicholson. What was the experience like?
It made me a better director, because he's so capable and exact that anything I would say, he would do exactly that in a way which rippled magnificently through the entire take. It's like driving a Ferrari. Not that I drive a Ferrari, but one of those great cars with really tight.
Right. You can give very specific
You know, I have
direction.
I have an '88 station wagon. You can do this, and it just keeps going straight. But those cars, so often, I'd give him a direction, and then he would do exactly that. And I go, oh man, that's not what I meant, or that wasn't quite right. And I have to say, cut. Excuse me. I know I said this, but really, what I mean is that. But nor did he expect brilliance in direction in this way. He would say, I mean, I've told this story before, forgive me, especially when About Schmidt was out, however many years ago. But before directing him, I called up Mike Nichols, who had reached out to me in a friendly way after seeing Election.
Wow.
And I said, you've directed Jack Nicholson 3 or 4 times. Could you please give me some advice on directing Jack Nicholson? And he said, this is over the phone, he said, oh, it's very simple, my boy. Just tell him the truth, because he's going to smell it on you anyway.
Right.
No trickery, don't put up a front. In other words,
You don't need to coddle him. Just say what
Here's
you
the-
need. Yeah.
be a director, you got to be yourself.
Yeah.
No false fronts. And there's so much, when you take directing the actor classes in film school or something, there's so much, or you read books about how to direct actors. There are these, never give a line reading, always give an actable verb, don't give a result. Like, who can do all that? I'm not Harold Clurman. I'm not Elia Kazan to like think of the most perfect thing in the right moment, you know?
Right.
So I could, in fact, Nicholson told me earlier, he goes, you know, it's okay to give me a line reading.
That's amazing.
Because especially, he goes, I've learned that especially with writers who then direct their own things, they hear it in a certain way in their brain, and it's got a certain rhythm, and I need to know that. Wow. So he was completely open. One other thing, can I just tell one? Again,
Please.
I've told this anecdote before, but it's worth retelling. That on the, because so even though I have Jack Nicholson, apparently, you know, it was still low budget, below the line. Had to make all my days. And there was one scene, the first or second week, where we had to get in and out of this location. So I kind of had to dictate a priori the coverage. So we bring in Mr. Nicholson. And I say, well, Mr. Nicholson, let's start here in a wide shot, and I'd like you to walk here, and I'll get a close-up, but then I want you to walk there, you know, whatever it was. And then I said, does that feel okay? Is that all right? And he said, look, kid, whatever you can come up with, I can find a way to justify it to myself. So what do you need?
Very practical.
Which is also someone, because he never forgot his beginnings as in low budget.
right. Roger Corman years.
You know, with Corman and at BBS, where you were always under the gun and trying to crank out a movie in, I don't know, 12 days or something.
That's a
He
film.
never let, sorry to interrupt, but
please.
he never forgot those origins.
Right.
And it's what made him a great, not just actor, but filmmaker. You know, he's an actor and director, but whose body of work, at least during a certain period of his life, is as cohesive and unique as any single director's.
I had the privilege I interviewed Jack, actually.
Oh,
I know.
You buried the lead.
Well, and I only mentioned this because you just said he's a filmmaker. I noticed that the Two Jakes they did a remastered DVD, and I reached out to his folks, and sure enough, he wanted to talk about the Two Jakes, the Chinatown
Great.
sequels.
How long ago was this?
This is probably around a little after you made. No, it's probably more like 12 years ago, not quite 20. Yeah, and it was a thrill of a lifetime.
Did you go meet it? Did you go to his house?
No. I spent about an hour on the phone with him, and he was delightful. And then I remember he endorsed Hillary Clinton that year. Must have been 2008. Do I have that right? I don't know. And about a month later, I rang up his assistant and said, does he want to talk about Hillary? And sure enough, like within half an hour, he rang me up on the phone again, and it was again, how press shy Mr. Nicholson is. It was a true privilege. Yeah.
He's a lovely guy. He
Yeah.
was always really elegant with me.
So I was going to say that film, much like a lot of your films, you're not a director that shies away from narration. A lot of like filmmakers.
You mean voiceover?
Sorry,
Oh, I
yes.
love it.
A lot of people say that's a crutch. Like,
That's like saying don't give a result to an actor. It's one of those dumb things they
stupid
tell
adages
you.
that is not. If you execute it well,
So yeah, go tell Billy Wilder and Terrence Malick and Stanley Kubrick that voiceover is no good in a movie. Come on, man, killing me.
do you record that after the fact, or are you on set with the actors? I mean, that's so key to like I think Election is so. I mean, that is part and parcel of that film.
We
the different
grabbed it
perspectives.
right after production. Went to a studio in Omaha and grabbed most of it, and then most of it remained intact. And it's good then because the actors are still very much in character.
Sure.
There were some lines of dialogue I think I had to go back some months later and pick up. Oh, especially since on Election we shot a new ending.
Right.
Excuse me. So I had to get some new voiceover from Matthew Broderick.
That I should mention. I know there's no real news, but like in the last year, it's been said that the Tom Perrotta sequel novel is something that you guys are developing potentially as a film.
Yes.
Reese. So now the news was that was for Paramount Plus. This dovetails with our earlier conversation. Would you ever make that for expressly Paramount
So
Plus?
I was busy making this movie, The Holdovers, when all that deal stuff was being hashed out. And it's like, oh yeah, Paramount Plus, and they're paying this much, and this is instructional on Paramount Plus. If and when Jim Taylor and I get around to it, I'm going to renegotiate that. No, for sure.
I'm glad to hear
I'm
it.
going to renegotiate that
have to.
Paramount Plus thing.
Yeah.
And go, and not just the begrudging 2-week theatrical window or something. Because, all right, I was about to go on a streamer tirade, but I won't.
Is there a passion for revisiting those characters? I mean, Tom has the broad strokes for you, but you can obviously adapt it however you want now. How faithful to that book are you going to be?
Tom wrote a very fine novel, as he always does. He's an outstanding writer, and Jim and I would enjoy doing Jim Taylor, and Reese Witherspoon would enjoy playing it, and we don't want to rope in Matthew Broderick's character, Jim McAllister, is not in this book,
Right.
but we'd want to rope him in somehow. The other thing, too, I'm slightly averse to is making another high school movie.
Right.
I did Election, I did, what is this one, Holdovers, and there are bits and pieces of it in Sideways and in a pilot I did, so I'm a little over it. So Jim and I are talking right now about how can we adapt that novel faithfully but loosely,
Right.
and put our own voice into it. So we'll get there. We're not quite there yet, but we'll get there.
Again, we've been talking a lot about casting, and I think
Oh, the reason I said that, sorry, to be clear,
Yeah.
is that Tom's novel also takes place in a high school.
No, of course.
So that's
Yeah.
that's why I said I didn't want to make another high school movie.
fair enough. I honestly can't believe something as amazing as Masterclass exists, and that's why I'm so thrilled they are a sponsor of Happy, Sad, Confused. I use Masterclass, and you should too. Let me just give you a sense of some of the classes that I've taken, I've learned from. You guys know I'm obsessed with movies, with movie making, with writing. You can learn about screenwriting from Aaron Sorkin, filmmaking from the likes of Martin Scorsese, Werner Herzog, Spike Lee, Jodie Foster. How about getting some acting tips from, I don't know, Samuel L. Jackson, Helen Mirren, Natalie Portman? David Lynch is on there teaching creativity. I am constantly amazed at the new masterclasses that are constantly appearing thanks to this wonderful resource, and I'm thrilled they are a Happy, Sad, Confused sponsor. So this fall, learn from the best to become your best with Masterclass. From leadership to negotiating to creativity to cooking, it's all there for you. Whether you're watching Masterclass on a TV, if you're learning in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality truly speaks for itself. It's like the Masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors. They are there to help you reach the next level. And just think about the cost, guys. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes with the folks I mentioned? Well, Masterclass starts at $120 a year for unlimited access with all 180 plus instructors. Think about it. And right now, our listeners to Happy, Sad, Confused get an additional 15% off an annual membership at masterclass.com/HSC. That's right. Get 15% off right now at masterclass.com/HSC. Masterclass.com/HSC. I love all the casting stories and the would-be casting stories. I'm a sucker for that stuff. We talked about getting Nicholson. Did you ever come close to getting Gene Hackman for Nebraska? I mean, I love what Bruce did, obviously, but
No.
the great Hackman is
No.
retired for good, I guess.
His agent, a real lovely guy and kind of legend at CAA, a guy named Fred Spector.
Right.
He's in his early 90s and still working.
Oh, really?
Like just a really amazing cat. He said, I'll send it to him, but don't expect an answer. So he claims that he sent it to Gene Hackman down in Santa Fe 2, 3, 4 times and never got a response for it. So
All right. He's resolute in his retirement. Hopefully he's enjoying it. Do you enjoy, we talk a lot about like the big name actors.
but it worked out
Oh, of course it did.
because Bruce,
is
now I can't
fantastic.
imagine anyone other than Bruce Dern in that part.
I think of something like The Descendants then on the flip side of like lesser known actors. And at the time, Shailene was not a huge name. She had done, I think, an ABC Family show.
Correct.
Et cetera. And there were stories of, I think, like folks ranging from like Brie Larson to Kristen Stewart being up for that role. Do you relish that process? Do you know immediately? Is it gut? Like how are you casting particularly?
I didn't know about Brie Larson.
She's talked about it. She's mentioned that she
Did I meet her?
apparently.
Oh, I remember meeting her later.
Well, someone's got it fuzzy. It's okay.
Don't tell her. She's a lovely actor.
She is.
But I do remember meeting
Kristen?
Kristen Stewart. Yeah, we met at Blinky's Donuts at Topanga Canyon Boulevard and Dumet's in Woodland Hills.
Is that your go-to?
Because she lived in Woodland Hills at the time, and I lived in Topanga Canyon, still do. So I said, like, she's on her way she was on her way to Brazil for a Twilight junket or something. She has to meet you at 8:30 in the morning. I go, can she meet at Blinky's? And
Does she
we
like
got there,
donuts?
she's like, I need coffee, man. And there's a Starbucks right across the street, so we went to the Starbucks. But yeah, I met her. She was nice.
But you knew, was
But
it
Shailene,
instantaneous
what
with
helped me
Shailene?
is Shailene came in and read. I need actors to read for me, even ones who were known and everything. And I mean no disrespect,
Yeah.
but
Until you actually see them
even
inhabit the words.
Bruce Dern, I even actually asked him to come in and do me the courtesy, and I'm on bended knee and
Yeah.
very respectful, very grateful. It just helps me, even if I pretty much know you're going to get the part, just come in and read so I can kind of start thinking about you more concretely, you in that part. And wait, one other anecdote. I worked with the great, don't say that lightly, Judy Greer on The Descendants. And I don't know if she's still like this, but at the time she described herself as an audition-only actor. And I said, why? She goes,
She wants to prove it to herself that she's
yeah,
doing
well,
it? Yeah.
sort of, yes. But she said, I don't want to just take an offer. I want to go in and meet the director. And what are we going to do? Just small talk? Who's going to get anything out of that?
Right.
I want to say some of the words of the script. And only when I do I have a sense that I'm right for the part with this director.
Right.
Like, is it really a good fit, me this text and the director.
Well, it must be so gratifying for you, and this is nothing new, that you've really exercised what control you have over that casting process, like the famous stories of Sideways, and you obviously worked with Clooney later on The Descendants, but like, you stuck to your guns and you're like, no, it's Giamatti, it's Thomas Hayden Church, and maybe you can get a bigger budget with George Clooney, but you wanted to make the film on your terms, and the proof's in the pudding, clearly.
The big they, often ask directors to compromise on the single most important part of the narrative movie, which is the casting of the leads,
right,
in order to have the most famous person in that 6-month window of time, in which you're trying to get the movie cast.
Yeah.
And I have to be willing to take a lower budget for the film in order to get the right casting in there. It's super important. When it works out that you have a star, I mean, in the event of a tie, the star wins.
Sure.
Because everybody's happier, and you get the money flows, and everybody feels better and breathes a sigh of relief. So when I had Clooney in Descendants, and Matt Damon in Downsizing,
win-win.
I've got stars who are right for the part,
Yep.
and everybody feels good.
What's the lesson learned, if there is one, for yourself on Downsizing? I mean, it must have been a trial for you to go through that. I mean, you'd never really experienced anything close to that in your career.
It's not that big a stretch, man. I mean, ultimately, it's probably a screenplay problem than anything else. It's an idea that probably would have been better served by a limited series in hindsight than a feature film. Yes, I found arduous visual effects because I just don't care that much about sitting in those endless damn visual effects meetings talking about contrast. And I'm like, well, that doesn't quite look right. Well, what doesn't look right to you? I don't know. You're the expert. You tell me what doesn't look right about it.
You don't come here and tell me how to direct Jack Nicholson.
I'm just telling you, it doesn't feel right, man. You're supposed to be the expert. I saw it again projected a few months ago. I didn't think the visual effects were that bad. I was kind of pleased with them. And there are some beautiful passages in that movie. But I don't have any big takeaway.
Right.
On
to the
you can't listen, man.
Yeah.
You can't win them all.
Yeah.
And my joke lately has been that in 600 years, when people really are small, I will be worshipped as a god.
So many statues in the rubble that is the
It'll
earth.
be hailed as a masterpiece
Exactly.
of early cinema, the first 300 years of cinema.
Yeah, before cinema was just pumped right into our brains.
But it was fun to make. It just had that extra layer of stuff on it. The other thing about higher budget movies, which is again fine, whatever, but there's an extra layer of people breathing down your neck.
Sure.
Because of the budget and then what it's going to cost to market it and that kind of thing. So when I say freedom lies in lower budgets, just not as many people are breathing down your neck.
So there's no quote unquote 4-quadrant $150 million every summer July 4th release in the Alexander Payne arsenal.
Sure, why not? But don't think that every one of those movies has to be a visual effects movie, or
Sure.
Don't get too caught up in what's current today.
Right.
Jim Brooks was making highly priced
Yes.
human comedies. Nancy Meyers has. Sidney Pollack was.
Yep.
See, and I actually missed those.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of that was star salaries, which you can say, star and director salaries, which are overblown. And I think that's a big mistake, with all respect. We still want to keep our prices down. It's just good business. But yes, I want to be no job too big, no job too small. It just depends on what it is.
Any more Jurassic films in your future? Or
That was just a job, man.
It was a job.
What he's referring to is Jim Taylor and I rewrote Jurassic Park 3 20 years ago.
It is a curiosity. When you go down the resume, that's like one of these things is not like the other. It's just an interesting.
You know what? It was a good job.
Okay.
Jim and I had done the last uncredited rewrite on Meet the Parents for Universal. And then Jurassic Park 3 was coming up. And a month out of away from shooting, they needed help not with the dinosaurs, but with the people. So we were called in to do some character work.
Let me end with just a couple miscellaneous questions for you. What's the most frequent direction you give your actors on set?
Great, now faster.
To the point. Have you ever had to fire anyone?
Yes. It's horrible.
Without
but you
name-
have to do it.
Without naming names, like what are the kind of circumstances that creates
Someone
that?
was disobedient.
Did you ever think you were ever going to be fired from a film?
No.
Okay, you're the mayor of Hollywood. You can do anything. You can change the business with one fell swoop. What do you change?
I'd have to think about that one.
Okay, fair enough. Best script you've ever written that's not been produced?
Most of the ones Jim and I have written have been made, I'm sorry to say. You know what? We did a rewrite years ago on something called Tucker Ames as Himself. It never got made. It disappeared into the ethos, but it was sort of a parody of a Bill Gates guy who gets his comeuppance in some way. I can't exactly remember, but that one had some good stuff in it.
It's got a good title.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see that you're selling out next by doing a film about rival antique
Chair dealers.
You're
Right.
really you're going to that Barbie Oppenheimer.
I'd love to sell out and get a bunch of money.
We said it. Your movies do sometimes make a lot of money. That's
It doesn't mean
possible.
I get it.
Pay this man. He
No,
deserves it all.
I'm serious. The phrase is, it has been for years, you get famous in movies but rich on TV. Right. And that's pretty much how it is.
So where's your max 10-part series that's going to buy
Stop
you 5
torturing
houses?
me.
Sorry. I'm just I'm looking out for you. You've given us so much. I want to give back.
Thanks. I like what I do.
I like what you
I'm
do
not
too.
complaining. I'm not complaining.
I'll let you go on that. The Holdovers is fantastic. As you
Thank
can tell,
you.
I'm
Very
such an
kind.
admirer
Thank
of
you.
your work. Everybody should see it. Most importantly, seen in a theater with friends, laugh, go through all the emotions, enjoy it. And thank you so much for this time.
You're very
It really
kind.
means a
Thanks
lot.
very much. Thanks for the interest.
Thank you.
And so ends another edition of Happy, Sad, Confused. Remember to review, rate, and subscribe to this show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm a big podcast person. I'm Daisy Ridley, and I definitely wasn't pressured to do this by Josh.